Right, I think we're ready to go.
Right, welcome everybody. So today we have a talk from Thakane Ntholi, who's the manager of the water and environment at the Council for Geosciences. She holds a PhD in geology with a focus on Earth stewardship, and she's keen on developing solutions that enable the exploitation of mineral wealth while protecting natural resources. And today she's going to talk about the most important of all natural resources, white gold. Over to you, Thakane.
Okay. Thank you so much, Chris, for the introduction. I am just going to share my screen and we can start the presentation. Okay, if you can just confirm that we are in presentation mode.
Yes, we are. You can see you fine.
Yep. Confirmed.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much. So today, maybe let me just say that this talk we're supposed to have this during Earth Week. So it focuses specifically on water. And today my topic is towards the sustainable relationship between water and mining. And we're going to look at lessons from the present and how they inform the future. And by the future, we mean water stewardship, which I will explain as we continue. Just to warn you, this is not going to be a data-focused talk. It's going to be more of a concept and principles that I will be explaining. However, if you are interested in the data that informs the principles and concepts that I'm sharing today, we do have multiple reports that are available on the CGS website. So this is the company disclaimer. I'll give you a second to have a look. Right. So as Chris said, today we are talking about white gold. And I just wanted to put up some of the most obvious but yet important facts about water. Access to water is a human right, particularly in South Africa. And water is important in almost, if not all, industries. So there is a great sense of competing uses for water. And unfortunately for us, water is a finite source. And the changing climate patterns are affecting the availability of water resources severely. Now, just to give you an idea of what the role of the Council for Geoscience is in the water space. We are a geoscience council, so what we do is we use multiple forms of geoscientific data to generate information that is beneficial for solving, hopefully, problems that affect society, both within our country, within the continent, and within the rest of the world. And we do this by mapping and modeling of groundwater resources. South Africa relies about 90% of its water from groundwater resources. We also do research towards water and mining, focusing on the remediation of acid mine drainage. Now, this is the water that is as a result of over 100 years of gold mining, particularly in the Witwatersrand basin of South Africa. And we will have a closer look at that kind of work. And this is where we will draw a lot of our examples from. We also now are starting to look at future planning for mines. So we're looking at the possibility of coexistence between mining and natural resources. And what this entails is that we do research to see how we can predict the potential harm that mining could do in a space before the mining even takes place. So if we do suspect that there is a potential of mineral resources in a certain place, what we will do is we will do an assessment of the water availability in the area, the quantity and the quality. We will also look at the water users around who rely on the water sources, especially if it is groundwater. And we will try to understand how the balance between mining and that water source together with other users will be. We then also try to encourage certain methodologies in mining. We are not necessarily that focused on technology, but we do sufficient research to inform and maybe recommend specific methodologies that will decrease the impact on water as a natural resource. But we still also look at contamination remediation in areas where absolute pollution cannot be prevented. So getting closer to the example that I wanted to give you with the lessons that we have learned over the years. Firstly, there is a good relationship between mining and water resources. Mining remains necessary for future development. If you think of the rise of battery minerals and other minerals that we are pursuing to have cleaner energy, you tend to realize that mining will continue, just maybe for different resources. And water is important for the exploitation of these resources and is a great enabler in mining. What is interesting is that mining, unlike many of the other industries, does not use a huge percentage of water, particularly in South Africa. We use about 3% of available water resources. However, this number may have increased or decreased as other industries become more water-wise and they have evolved their methodologies. But water really does play an important role, and it's not just in the active mining of getting the ore out of the ground, but it is also in other activities such as cooling. So in the deep mines of the Wits, they use a lot of water for cooling, and they also use the water for washing the ore at times and other equipment on site. However, there is also a negative relationship between water and mining. So it happens when mining turns around and pollutes the actual water that does carry it on its back. So what we learned over the years is that mining has a negative impact in water. It reduces the water quality significantly, but most importantly, the impacts of the contamination of mining on water goes beyond the boundary of the mine. So this makes, although mining is not a huge consumer, it makes it a very huge polluter of water resources. So in 2002, when we saw the rise of acid mine drainage in the Wits and it discharging into the natural environment, that was a trigger for us to seriously consider the relationship between water and mining. It was kind of an awakening that brought together government departments, industries, and research institutions to come and develop and devise ways to better manage mine-influenced water. So we started to see coordination of ideas, which now is what is helping us move towards sustainable management of mine-impacted water. And we also started to see the coherence of plans in the implementation. Initially, mining companies had their own plans, government had plans, there was research happening in academic institutions, but we really did not see the coordination. However, as negative as this event was, it is one of those events that brought together the different entities. So we then started to see the development of short-term plans, medium to long-term plans, and even plans that were flagging further investigation that is needed for us to be able to really have this sustainable relationship. Just to zoom in a little bit on what the CGS was contributing towards in this plan for sustainable relationships, we focused on multiple projects, and some of them which I would really like to highlight is that we started to look at different treatment technologies that were not seen as common or, how do I say, desirable technologies for the kind of mine water we were seeing in the Wits. We looked at in situ treatments, which were also seen to have multiple limitations. But I think as an organ of state, it was our responsibility to be able to invest in taking this research further to really assess how impossible or not so desirable it is. I would also like to highlight the development of regional closure strategies, because as I indicated before, when we had the management of water in silos, as much as it was effective, it did not make sense in the biggest grand of things. So as a Geoscience Council, the one thing we really do best is maps. So we put together multiple maps that included components of, the structural geology within the basin. We looked at the lithologies, we looked at the hydrological patterns and cycles over the years to really devise a strategy that will help with planning for regional strategies, so that we don't assess the water challenges only for a specific mine, but rather we look at it at a regional scale. The lessons that we learned when all these exercises were said and done, in fact, I shouldn't say said and done because they're ongoing, is that although you can have a positive use of water in one industry, and it really helps that industry thrive, we need to be aware that that can have negative impacts downstream and on other industries that you do not see. And this is not just true for mining, it is actually true for many industries such as the clothing industry and agriculture and so on. We also learned that the coordination of ideas is a better way to manage these negative impacts. So silo mentality falls away, and we start to look at the integration of different areas of study. We start to look at the integration of different spheres of government. We also look at the integration of academic institutions and other research institutions to come to the party so that we can have one long-term solution. Because after all, water as a resource affects all of us in different ways. And the most important lesson was that planning is definitely better than reacting. So then, if we are going towards sustainable water and mining relationships, what can we do today, or what are we implementing today to enable this relationship? One of the programs that we run is a proactive solutions program. As I said in the past slide, planning is really better than reacting. So we have started to look at alternative use of the existing mine water. So this is mine water that we had not planned for, but it is here now. Different technologies are treating water to specific purity levels. Not all water will be potable and okay for human consumption, but we are starting to understand that some of the water can be treated to a certain extent such that it can be used in certain industries such as agriculture. And I think agriculture is actually one of those research areas that has really picked up as far as the use of mine water goes. We have also started to look at concurrent remediation plans. So this is treat as you go. And we have looked at pre-closure planning. I think about a few months ago, there was a release of the National Mine Closure Strategy, which really focuses on these kind of approaches to say, what is the strategy for the longer term and how mining actually impacts on water resources. So I said that we want to eventually go towards water stewardship. But what is water stewardship? It is defined as using water in a way that is socially equitable, environmentally sustainable, and economically beneficial. So if we look at mining as an industry, we can easily see that the mining is economically beneficial, and that is one use of water. What we are doing now is working towards an environmental sustainability. And then, of course, there are other sectors that look at social equitability, which we don't focus on, but it does touch on the work that we do. So for us to work towards water stewardship, and especially as an organ of state and as a scientific institution, we have now started to look at planning, and we want information-driven planning. So we have started to model the future availability of water, and this includes surface and groundwater. We are also looking at competing water uses. As much as one can say that mining is important for the development of different countries and different technologies, we also have to acknowledge that there are competing water uses, and all those have to be taken into consideration. We are looking at coexistence of mining and natural resources. I think this I explained a little bit at the beginning. And we're also looking at incorporating new technologies for efficient water use. And as I indicated before, we're not particularly focused on development of technologies, but we like to keep abreast so that when we do advise the state and we advise towards policy development, we can flag the availability of technologies out there. But one of the most important things that we do is we also do life cycle assessment. And this is on potential solutions that are proposed. Why this is important is that sometimes we come up with a solution that is really good for one problem, but we don't realize that this solution creates other problems. I will give an example with desalination, for example. You know, it is a great concept where you can have potable water at the end of the process. However, it is also an energy intensive process. So you have to balance the availability of the fresh water that you do get from a process versus the other impacts that you do have on the environment. So this goes particularly with mining as well, to look at the impact of the total technologies. If we say this mining technology does not pollute water resources, we need to make sure that this mining technology does not create a problem on the other side of the spectrum. And I think in closing, I would like to quote Professor Martin de Wet, who was my Earth Stewardship supervisor. And he used to say, Earth Stewardship is not about choosing, it is about making everything work together for good of the present and the future. And yeah, that's all I wanted to share with you today. I will take questions if there are any. Thank you.
Thanks, Takalani. It's quite interesting. You said that water only uses 3% of only use 3% of our water. I thought I heard that mining uses about 30% of South Africa's energy. Is that wrong? Because if you factor in the energy usage of mining, isn't the indirect use of water much higher than that?
Yes, Chris, I can't confirm the 30% of the energy, but it sounds quite close. So this is why in the last slide, I was talking about life cycle assessment, that if you look at water use in the active mine, it seems to be one way. But like you're saying, if you look at it holistically, from the birth of the mine to the end of it, actually, because of the intensive energy use, you do have higher water consumption. So I definitely do agree with you there.
Yeah, and it sounds like as water becomes more important, that mining is going to move to the wetter parts of the country. So maybe we're going to have a mining boom down here in KZN.
Well, first you need to have the mineral resources. So if you do have the mineral resources, then maybe the mining will follow the water, yes.
Just a question from me. Is climate change and the possible effects of climate change taken into account in your various scenario modeling and way forward?
Yes, so climate change is a key contributor towards the changing availability of water. So we do take that into account. I think when it comes to climate change, one of the difficulties right now is that it is a reality. However, the patterns are not clear yet. So you take them into account and you improve the models as you go. And in the life cycle assessment, what we do is one of the outputs is the CO2 emissions. And we account for that as well when we do our modeling. So we're not only looking at the actual climate change, but we're also looking at the contributors as well.
Yeah. You mentioned, water stewardship, and now mining has to be socially equitable. I mean, and traditionally as geologists, we didn't give that a second thought, but it seems to be more and more of an issue is that, if you're a geologist, you have to kind of be aware of all the consequences, and like, geoethics now seems to be a sort of separate discipline that's going to become perhaps more important to geologists of the future.
Yes, that definitely is true. And I think it's not because geologists didn't want to think about it. I think it's just how we had compartmentalized the different sciences that we do and the work that we do. We hadn't really thought about the impact of what we do on other spaces of society. But I think investors are starting to be very conscious of how the mining environment operates, how it treats the environment, and how it treats people. And that's why even now in our planning for coexistence of mining and the environment, we are factoring in social factors. And this will assist South Africa to at least be more appealing towards investors.
So is the CGS going to hire a sociologist any day soon?
I don't know, Chris. Sometimes it's okay to highlight areas and you let the specialists deal with it. So it's not always about having to hire somebody to come in, but it's always about forging collaborations that help you reach that common goal. I think gone are the days when each department was working for itself. We're now trying to just come together so that we have one sensible product.
Yeah, and the CGS doesn't have to be isolated from the rest of. You can always come and join the Geological Society for a Zoom chat. Yeah.
All right, well, that's always good to know, Chris. Yeah, there's definitely no value in being isolated.
Great. Well, thanks for the chat, Thakane. Craig, do you want to close the meeting? Okay.
Yeah, I'll close the meeting now. Thanks, Thakane. We'll get this up on YouTube probably in the next couple of days.
Okay, thank you so much for having me. It is really a pleasure for me to be here, and yeah, hopefully the next time we talk, we would have made better strides towards that stewardship. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Thank you all. Thanks. Bye.
Cheers.